Um, are we ready, Ollie?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Yes. Okay. Uh, as I said before, we do this in English, and it's good for Ollie because he didn't have to learn Ukrainian over the weekend, and it makes it easier for me also. But if you need, I can always translate something if it's necessary. Or if somebody wants to ask a question later in Ukrainian, no problem, I translate it. But most everybody, when we discuss it, it's fine to do it in English. And today we with us Olly Hogben, who is for many years commentator at the International Floorball Federation and has a very long experience from different sport commentating different sports. So we are very glad to have you with us today and that you took time to share your knowledge with us. And I give you the word.
Thank you so much. It's my great pleasure to be here. I really am delighted to have been asked to do this, and I'm thrilled to get to meet you all and work with you all. Actually, it's been really exciting seeing the development of the sport in Ukraine over the last little while. I have this feeling I'm going to end up commentating you guys at a WFC at some point soon anyway, because it's clear that you're getting stronger and stronger every time you play. So it's wonderful to get to know the community a little bit better. Um, I, I want really just to share ideas about commentary over the next little while, and I'm so pleased to get the chance to learn from you as well. I've heard little clips here and there, obviously on social media, of some of the things that you're doing as a federation. And I know that you're getting a lot more TV coverage now, aren't you? That the league is getting shown a lot more, which is fantastic because obviously that's really important. And maybe that's where I can help provide a bit of perspective as a commentator on my own experience of commentating floorball across a number of different platforms. Because I've commentated floorball for a hardcore audience, and I've commentated floorball for a casual audience as well, and probably every audience in between. So that's something I want to talk about a bit. So what I'm going to do basically is start with a bit about my own journey as a commentator, and then I will talk a bit more about my kind of philosophy as a broadcaster, and then just share some strategies I use. And then I'd love to learn about your own strategies, and we can just kind of share some ideas and have a chat basically. Feel free just to jump in with questions whenever you want to as well, but I'll do some specific questions at the end. Um, I start by establishing that I don't believe my way of doing it is the way of doing it. I just have my way of working that's been based on learning from every single commentator that I meet. It's my way refined over years and years of getting it wrong and trying to change my approach whenever I feel like I'm not doing something right. I approach every single session I do in any sport from the perspective of what can I actually do that's a bit better this time. I always actively ask myself that question, what do I need to change slightly? No matter how well I think it's gone previously, I always like to try to uh, add something, do something slightly different. For example, my thing for the last World Floorball Championships was I wanted to do more on domestic leagues. I wanted to try to make the international viewer more aware of the domestic game. That was just a kind of thing that I decided I wanted to focus on more this time. In previous tournaments, it's been something different. It just kind of depends what I feel I need to personally get better at. Um, but yeah, if I look at all the commentators I've worked with, I can tell you just looking at them what it is the thing I've learned from them. Because I do actively try to just study every single person out there because we're all different and you will all be really different in how you commentate as well. So I give you a warning, which is I'm going to start slightly like philosophically and talk about my my I suppose my ideology of commentary and what really matters to me. And then I'll get really practical and look at things like how I do my notes and how I gather information, where I find the information, that sort of stuff. So hopefully that will be a useful way of doing it. Um, I was going to show a clip of my career as a commentator, but I don't think it's working properly with the sound. So never mind. But what I'll do is just give you a brief summary of it. I have commentated 73 different sports. Sport number 73 was ski jumping a couple of weeks ago, which I was asked to do with 48 hours of notice for Eurosport. I'd actually never really watched ski jumping before, so I just had to step in very much at the last minute. Um, but yeah, 73 different sports, and I've worked at a lot of multi-sport events, and that's actually where I discovered floorball for the very first time, which was at the World Games in 2017, and I was doing that for the Olympic Channel. So my four main sports would definitely be gymnastics, football, a mixture of racket sports, and then my floorball work. That's probably what I'm best known for. But as I say, I've done 73 different sports, which has given me a sort of unusual perspective on the relationship between different sports, and I'll talk maybe a bit later at what I've learned from the crossover between covering so many different sports. Um, but my own journey into broadcasting, it was a bit weird because I actually started as a school and university teacher for 12 years. I was a theatre teacher. Drama was my subject, and that definitely matters in terms of my own work as a commentator. I have absolutely no training in broadcasting. I didn't study journalism. I didn't study commentary. I just decided one day I wanted to become a sports commentator, which had always been a kind of dream fantasy job for me as a kid. And I just made a demo one day with my oldest friend. I was about 30 and I made a demo and sent it off to a few companies and started commentating from there. So I just kind of worked my way into the industry step by step while I was still teaching. And then eventually I went full time when I was asked to do my first Olympic Games. My first multi-sport event was the European Games in Baku in 2015. And that was where I started to cover lots of different sports, and from there got asked to do the Olympics. And my discovery of floorball was a total accident. I did the World Games in 2017. I was actually brought to the World Games to do the gymnastics and to do the sumo because I speak Japanese. I used to live there. And so that's why I was brought there. And they wanted somebody who could deal with the pace of floorball. And I
Mhm.
had commentated lacrosse in the UK, and that was enough for the Olympic Channel to put me on the floorball because they knew that if I could do the pace of lacrosse, I could hopefully do the pace of floorball. And at the end of that, the John at the IFF asked me if I would start doing the World Championships for the federation. So that's how I discovered floorball. And I will start by saying that I actually think floorball is, of all of the 72 sports I've commentated, is one of the hardest. And I think anyone who can commentate floorball is a proper commentator and deserves serious respect for it because the pace of floorball is really difficult. You have, I think, in floorball, less thinking time than you do in most sports. When I commentate tennis, I have almost too much thinking time. And when I commentate floorball, I have no thinking time. And that's why I love floorball because I love having no thinking time. And I love the fact that so much of commentating floorball is about instinctive reaction. And you've got to be so quick in your delivery. So respect to anyone who makes floorball their main sport because of the challenges of commentating it. And I think it's an amazing sport to commentate. I love it. I've fallen completely in love with floorball from discovering it by accident. So that's my journey into broadcasting, and the reason why I've given you that context is because um, it's important in terms of my own philosophy. because I have no background as an athlete. So I don't think I'm good at sport. And that's actually really important for how I commentate because I think that if you're a commentator who doesn't have an elite sporting background, you should never think you're good at sport because you'll become arrogant in how you commentate. I'm impressed by all athletes. I consider all athletes up here, whatever whatever level they play their sport at. And I think the moment you step onto a floorball court representing your team, representing your country, the respect that you should be given by the commentator is up here. And and sometimes I say this to floorball players because they don't realize it. I say to them, you know, you've represented your country. You've done something that almost nobody will ever do in your sport, in any sport. And they don't realize how much that means, especially because floorball is maybe a smaller sport to a lot of people. It's still an accomplishment that almost nobody ever gets to enjoy, to represent their country or represent their club, to appear on television in a major competition. So that's really central to my philosophy is put the athlete up here, treat them with the respect that they deserve. Um, and from my background as a teacher, and as a student of theatre, I love language, I love history, I love the arts, I love culture, I love society, and that's a big part of how I commentate. And I'll come on to that later in terms of what that means for me as a broadcaster. And I use lots of the skills I learned as a teacher as a commentator because we are as commentators always teaching our audience something. We're always trying to get them engaged and get them to connect. And I think one of the reasons I've done so many different sports is because I know how to communicate new information to an audience. So if it's a sport that people don't know very well, I almost think about my own life as a teacher and how I communicate that new information to a viewer. So that's just a bit about me and my own background, but I'll shut up for a bit now. And I'd like to know from your point of view, all of you who are listening, what you believe makes good commentary. Please just jump in and tell me what you actually think is good commentary.
Um, I probably you can see me. Hello.
Hello.
I think that the person who can call himself a good commentary is the person who can deliver information fast, but also, as you said about it, you need to educate people about the things that is happening on the field. So if they are new to the sport, they can understand this and be in the game like with the whole audience. So
Beautiful. Yeah.
mm,
And I
You put that so well. Sorry, please. Yeah.
yeah, and I just want to add to Michael that yeah, so from my perspective, when I look for a good match and I want to enjoy some match, so I can say that when I learn from qualified people who understand his sport, or it doesn't matter what is it, which sport, but it can be a foreigner player or like a professional player, and from his perspective it looks like this game is so game can become more personal to you because he will admit some new information that you don't know, so he will know why he use stick like this, why they play like this, and this qualify it gives you like more interesting and more enjoyable in a match. So I think that it's the most powerful thing. Yeah, we can talk like yeah, I admit that someone have like his charisma so good that he cannot be really good in this sport, but because of his understanding of I don't know with his good language or I don't know with his voice, with his charisma, so he will just do something specific, and yeah, it's like his aura. He will just make a good show. he will make show. But yeah, from my perspective, the person who know how to play, who play a lot in the sport that he is commentating, it's mm, the best way to listen to them. I don't know how
Yeah.
to say it.
Yeah, no, perfect. Very, very interesting. Anyone else?
I'm agree with Edwin about show part of the commenting because there is a lot of boring matches. I commented the World Cup, the last World Cup matches. There is happened in Ukraine boring matches, and the high quality commentator have to make show at these moments to keep attention of the viewers and hold their attention during whole game, even during whole the during boring moments of interesting game like this.
Yeah, very,
Yeah,
very
and
well
that
put. Sorry, carry on.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
you,
that
you go,
was
Edwin.
yeah, that was my to be honest, when I received information that we will have a call with you. So I have this question in my head, and I don't know. I think that you will give us some time uh, to give these questions, but maybe not now, but later you will answer me. How we can make bad match or boring match more interesting, and how when nothing is happening or match is so boring that I start to I don't know I become sleepy, so or like dizzy. So what we can do? What from my perspective, what I need to do, and how I can create this match more interesting and more enjoyable for our viewers.
Right. We'll definitely come back to that. Yeah, because that's an experience I've had many times especially in floorball, where maybe it's 5-0 after the first 3 minutes, and suddenly you're then wondering what your narrative is going to be. Um, yeah, we'll definitely come back to that later. Um, I'm very interested by the perspective that you've given me on what you believe makes good commentary, because um, firstly, you all said sort of the same thing, but you also all said different things. And that's really important for us to remember, that actually none of our viewers agree on what makes good commentary, because it's completely personal to them and what they need and what they want. And actually, something that we've got to try to do is to think about all of our audience members, and the fact they all have something slightly different they want from a broadcast. But I agree with everything that's been said, actually. Um, I'm really guided by the original BBC principles, which are inform, educate, and entertain. And I always like to think about those. Um, oh, it says I've just had this notification saying my free meeting will end in 10 minutes. Um, might have to jump back on in a bit. Okay, it's interesting. Right. I'm sure we'll fix it. But yes, original BBC principles of inform, educate, and entertain. I think the three of them all have to relate, all have to be equally important when we're commentating. Um, and I think the moment that we start to focus too heavily on one or two of them and we forget about the other, then the commentary loses its three dimensions. It loses its shape. For me, it's inform is make sure the viewer knows what's happening and help them to see and I think that the first uh, gentleman who spoke, Michael, you said that exactly this about helping them actually see um, what's happening clearly. And is what I call immediate context and wider context. Help them see the match, but help them see around the match as well. And that will tie in, Edwin, with uh, what you asked about, which we'll come to later, how you make things more interesting when the match is boring. That's where I think wider context is good. Um, Educate, leave the viewer knowing more than they knew before the broadcast started, help them develop their own understanding. One of my main sports, as I said, is gymnastics. And sometimes when you commentate gymnastics to people, it can just sound like you're giving them a lesson on nuclear physics. It's just there's lots of difficult stuff to understand. Now, I want the audience to understand how to judge gymnastics. So I want to try to tell them what to look for. And I also want to give them time to look for it themselves. Something that I think is a problem in commentary is when we tell our audience what to think instead of giving them options for what to think. So there is nothing wrong in a floorball match, in a football match, with uh, questioning your audience. So, for example, if you see a decision made by the referee and you don't agree with the decision, and this happens all the time when I'm commentating football, you don't need to jump straight in, I think, and actually say what you think about the decision. You can let the audience argue amongst themselves about it. I think it's really fun when we watch sport together and we argue and we discuss together. I think it's one of the best things about football is people arguing. And my favorite football commentator, he said to me once that he said, if I tell you it's definitely a penalty, then the only person you can be angry with is me. But if I say to you, um, well, the referee has decided that's a penalty, and there may be some people who disagree with that, and there may be some people who agree with that, then I've now passed it over to you as an audience member to have the debate with yourself and to actually start to educate yourself about it. And sometimes, and I see this with, I don't know what it's like in Ukraine, but sometimes in football in the UK, we have ex-players who they were great players, but they don't actually know the laws of football. And it's amazing. They've played for like 30 years, but they don't know the laws of the sport. And so they say things like, I don't think that was a penalty. And I always say, I don't care what they think. I care what the laws say. And their job is to say, that's what the expert should say. The law, the handball law is this. And the referee has decided it's a penalty because this. Or in floorball, you know, the rule here for a 2-minute penalty is this, and the referee has decided this. Now, if you think that's wrong, say it. I think this is you'll hear me do this. Step back, and sometimes I say, I'll leave you with that one at home, or I'll leave you discussing that amongst yourselves, because then you can maybe get more of an animated conversation happening between fans themselves. So I think that's the purpose of remembering. Education doesn't mean we talk at the viewer. I think it means we give them time to actually learn for themselves, and we don't tell them what to think the whole time. And that brings me to entertain, which yeah was the first thing that was said by you. Always remember that people watch sport for entertainment. Help them have a good time. I always say we watch it, if we want to be depressed, we watch the news. If we want to have fun, we watch sport. And sport is where people go to celebrate and to enjoy life. And nothing's worse than a commentator who seems annoyed at having to commentate. And we sometimes get that with commentators, that they almost like they start to feel the match is boring, and then they start to communicate their level of boredom. And actually, we should always commentate with that smile of enjoying the experience, enjoying the occasion. One of the best co-commentators I work with is Zane Clabare, the former Latvian captain. Um, One of the reasons I love commentating with Zane is because she never forgets to be surprised by floorball. She never forgets to enjoy floorball. Um, and so she can say really intelligent things. Her analysis is really strong, but she also just has the pure surprise and enjoyment always of a floorball match. And I think when you work with experts, sometimes they have to be reminded to remember to enjoy the match rather than just to say cold analysis. So those are my kind of guiding principles: inform, educate, entertain. Right, that's the end of the philosophy bit. I just wanted to throw that out there at the start. Um, do we need to start a new meeting? Is this going to end in 3 minutes?
Yeah, it could be so. So we have to rejoin this meeting
Yeah.
in 5 minutes. So everybody's
Okay.
ready for that.
Okay, fine, fine. Okay. So just I'm going to start the first of my four strategies now for commentating. And I would say that for me personally, the majority of commentary is preparation. That I genuinely think that most of what you do as a commentator, the audience never ever sees. And I'll show you a bit about how I prepare. This is just my general layout. Um, so I just get things as close to the screen as I possibly can when I'm commentating, and this is what my notes look like for the WFC final for the Finnish team. So I've got just a very simple system that I always use. And I put everything in exactly the same place all the time. So I've got obviously I've got the goalkeepers at the start. I personally do everything in number order. So I like to have it sequentially going through the numbers. Some people like to do it by lines and positions. I don't think there's a right or wrong. I think you do what you like. I know some floorball commentators who like to do it by the line. The only problem for me there is when the line changes, you've then got two different bits of paper as the lines have been mixed, and that can be tricky. But so I just do both goalkeepers, and then I do numbers one, one after the other in order. Um, so as you can see, I always have the club in bold when it's international. And okay, I think the meeting's about to stop. So shall I stop there and then we can
Stop.
rejoin?
Yes.
Okay, I'll stop there and then I'll see you all in a moment.
Okay.